Lu Yutong was a true disciple, but the math didn't add up. She wasn't as lethal as Qi Yongyi, so why did she hold the rank? The answer was simple. The Lu clan. The academy had to pay its respects to one of the 8 great clans, and they knew that come the year-end tournament, the Lias would hand her a family treasure, a short-term booster that would turn her into a whirlwind of destruction, ensuring her seat remained untouched. It was a back door. Only the elite could open once per generation. Everyone else, they had to crawl through glass and fire to earn their place. But above the 30 true disciples stood the Trinity of Power, the core disciples. These were the crown jewels of Rain Country. They weren't just students, they were the face of the nation's martial future. To even be considered, you had to be a master of the gushing spring tier. Centuries ago, a core disciple had even touched the spiritual ocean. Qi Feng Yun, the 3rd imperial prince, 27 years old and a 7th layer gushing spring beast. He was the strongest son of heaven, the pinnacle of the academy. Zhao Huan, 23 years old, 5th layer gushing spring. A golden light supposedly bathed the city at his birth. A phenomenon so threatening the imperial family almost executed him as a rival to the throne. Instead, the emperor wisely named him the Marquis of the Golden Sky. At birth, he was a monster in human skin. Qin Yi, the enigma. A 22-year-old orphan with no right arm. In the brutal world of martial arts, a missing limb is a death sentence, yet he stood at the 3rd layer of gushing spring. With a battle prowess of 7 stars. Even Zhao Huan feared a direct clash with him. Interesting, Ling Han muttered. The princes and heirs didn't faze him, but a one-armed orphan who defied the heavens. That piqued his interest. Does he have a heaven-grade spirit base, or is he just too stubborn to die? Hey, are you the new brat? The enrollment teacher arrived, staring at Ling Han with blatant confusion. It wasn't every day a student reported for duty carrying a snoring little girl. I am. Ling Han handed over his credentials. The teacher, a 5th layer gushing spring elite, glanced at the paper and froze. You're Ling Han? Am I that famous? Ling Han asked, scratching his head. Ha! The 4th layer brat who brought down Qi Yongyi. The headmaster gave strict orders. The moment you arrived, I'm to bring you to him personally. The teacher's eyes suddenly bugged out as he scanned Ling Han's aura. Wait, you're already at the 5th layer? He swallowed hard. He assumed Ling Han had been sitting on the verge of a breakthrough for months. He had no idea that a few weeks ago, Ling Han was barely breathing at the body refining stage. If he knew, he'd have had a stroke right there. Hu Niu, woken by the teacher's shouting, bared her teeth and let out a low, predatory growl. Come on. Let's see the old man. They reached the high-level quarters, but the headmaster was absent. The teacher told Ling Han to wait while he went to hunt the old man down. Boredom quickly set in, and Ling Han began to wander. Suddenly, a scent hit him. It was sharp, chemical, and familiar. He followed it to an elegant courtyard where the door stood ajar. Inside, a girl sat cross-legged, her hand erupting in flames as she heated a small furnace. She was attempting to craft a storm pill, a speed booster. But the smell was wrong. It was dangerously wrong. I'd stop if I were you, Ling Han said flatly. In 3 breaths, that furnace is going to paint the walls with your face. The girl didn't even blink. She was at the critical stage. 1 breath. 2. Pa. The lid shattered, and a spray of failed medicinal sludge erupted. She dodged most of it, but a smear of black junk hit her cheek. The furnace had died a violent death. She looked up at Ling Han, shock masking her anger. How had he known? Her control was supposed to be perfect. Scarlet wolf bone is a volatile mess, Ling Han said, shaking his head. Using it in a storm pill ruins the quality and turns the furnace into a bomb. I don't know what kind of idiot taught you that recipe. How dare you insult my master? The girl exploded. She lunged, her right hand wreathed in flames that rippled the air with heat. 7th layer element gathering. Ling Han saw through her instantly. Her rank was high, but her form was sloppy. She had clearly used pills to boost her cultivation while neglecting her actual combat training. Typical alchemist. As she stood, Ling Han realized she was breathtaking, tall, slender, and possessing a divine beauty that rivaled Lu Yutong's. Did I stutter? Ling Han laughed, sidestepping her strike with effortless grace. Hu Niu crouched nearby, her eyes bright with excitement, waiting for the signal to take a bite out of this deity. The young girl scoffed, her eyes flashing with a cold, defensive fire. She didn't stop her assault as she spat out. This formula was a shattered, incomplete relic of the past. My master bled for years to stitch it back together, to reclaim what was lost for the sake of all alchemy. You dare call his life's work the product of an idiot? You don't just deserve a lecture. You deserve a brutal beating? Ling Han's brow furrowed. The storm pill too. A wave of bitter frustration washed over him. What had happened to this world? Why were the foundations of his era crumbling into dust? The reverse pill, the storm pill, even the dark moon grass, a precious resource, was being squandered on something as mundane as a purple origin pill. It was a goddamn travesty. 10,000 years should have led to evolution, not this pathetic degradation. He slammed his palm forward, the impact sending a shockwave that forced the girl back several steps. He wore a sharp, predatory smile. If he patched it together, then fine, your master has a bit of wit. But if I can forge a storm pill that makes his look like garbage, what then? What will you do then, little genius? Impossible, she shrieked, her pride wounded. No one surpasses my master. Then shut up and let me work. If I fail, you can go back to trying to hit me, Ling Han retorted. Fine. Do it. Ling Han snatched the discarded furnace from the dirt. Ingredients, now. He rattled off a list of 20 medicinal herbs in a single, rapid-fire breath. Any ordinary person would have been lost, but as an alchemist, Li Si-chan had a mind built for data. She vanished into the back room and returned a moment later, her arms laden with the materials. Ling Han dropped onto the dirt, unceremoniously sitting where he stood. He gripped the furnace. Hong. A burst of flame ignited from his palm, dancing with a life of its own. Li Si-chan's lip curled in disgust. To her, alchemy was a sacred rite. You approached the furnace with solemnity, seated in a perfect meditative posture. Ling Han looked like a common beggar playing in the mud. It was an insult to the craft. But she choked back her rebuke. To interrupt a man mid-concoction was the ultimate sin of the guild. She watched with narrowed, disdainful eyes. Her master, Wu Songlin, was a black-grade high-level alchemist. A titan of the craft whose name commanded the respect of the royal family itself. He was the headmaster of the alchemy department. This brat is a dead man walking, she thought. Once he fails, he won't make it 3 steps out of this courtyard alive. Then, Ling Han's aura shifted. The casual boy vanished, replaced by a presence that felt ancient and absolute. His left hand became a blur, feeding ingredients into the furnace with a rhythm that was almost hypnotic. His right hand rotated the vessel continuously, the flames beneath it morphing with violent speed, shifting from a deep, blood red to a vivid green, then to a blinding, ethereal white. Li Si-chan's sneer died on her face, her jaw slowly went slack. She was a prodigy in her own right, handpicked by a grandmaster, but as she watched Ling Han, she felt like a child staring at the sun. His movements weren't just fast, they were perfect. He moved with a relaxed maturity that only came from centuries of immersion. It was as if he could forge these pills in his sleep, in the dark, while the world burned around him. How? Her mind screamed. He's a spoiled brat, how can he have the hands of a god? Beads of sweat rolled down Ling Han's face. The storm pill was no joke, a yellow-grade mid-level pill that fought back during the forge. At his current cultivation, he was burning through his stamina just to keep the furnace stable. Ho, my brilliant disciple, have you finally conquered the storm? A jubilant, gravelly voice echoed from the gate. A short, stout old man walked in, beaming as he carried a food container. Behind him followed another elder. On their chests sat 3 silver badges. Black-grade high-level alchemists. The 2 masters of Rain Country, Fu Yuan Sheng and Wu Songlin. Wu Songlin froze, his smile evaporating as he saw it wasn't his disciple at the furnace. What the? Fu Yuan Sheng's eyes nearly popped out. He knew Li Si-chan was a genius, but here was a complete stranger. A boy, wrestling with a pill that made veteran alchemists sweat. Hu Niu, who had been dozing, suddenly twitched. Her nose wrinkled at the scent of the food in Wu Songlin's hand. She sprang up, a low, hungry growl vibrating in her chest, and lunged like a shadow toward the container. Ling Han's hand accelerated. Suddenly, 3 distinct tears of fire erupted from his fingertips simultaneously, red, green, and white. They flared with a roar, then instantly vanished. The 3 Fire Guide. An invention from his past life that had once set the world of alchemy on fire. It could turn a failure into a masterpiece. It could bring a dead pill back from the brink of an explosion. Wu Songlin and Fu Yuan Sheng stood paralyzed. Their mouths hung open, their eyes wide with a terror-stricken awe. They looked like statues of men who had just seen a ghost. In that moment of absolute shock, Hu Niu snatched the food container from Wu Songlin's limp grasp and began tearing into the meal with feral joy. Is that the legendary 3 Fire Guide, 3 temperatures? At once. To force the essence into the core? That's a myth? It's a goddamn fairy tale. It has to be a fake, an imitation, it has to be. Ling Han exhaled a long, heavy breath of steam. He tossed the furnace to Li Si-chan like it was a piece of junk. There. I didn't disappoint, did I? See for yourself. Shua. The two old masters moved like lightning, practically tackling each other to get to the furnace. These spiritual pedestal-tier powerhouses were acting like starving dogs fighting over a bone. Li Si-chan watched, her world crumbling, as her revered master and the pavilion master of heaven's medicine nearly came to blows over a pile of scrap metal. They finally pulled a single, scarlet pill from the ashes. This scent, this purity, it's real, it's the storm pill. Wu Songlin scraped a tiny sliver off and tasted it. The shock on his face turned into a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. It's real. And its potency. It's 12 stars. No, 13 stars. What? Fu Yuansheng screamed, nearly jumping out of his skin. In the cold, clinical hierarchy of alchemy, a 10-star pill is the gold standard. It is perfection as defined by the books. 11 or 12 stars. That is a freak of nature. A miracle of the cauldron. Anything less than 10 is a varying degree of failure, and anything under 1 star is just toxic slag, fit only for the gutter. Hiss. Even on my best day, with the simplest of low-grade pills, I've only ever touched 12 stars, Fu Yuansheng breathed, his voice trembling with a mixture of awe and terror. Li Si-chan felt the world tilting on its axis. She was the jewel of the academy, a prodigy hand-reared by a grandmaster. Her best work was usually a safe, mediocre 10. Occasionally she hit 11. More often, she slumped to a 9. She had spent a month wrestling with the storm pill, and every single attempt had ended in the violent scream of an exploding furnace. To complete the pill at all was a feat. To hit 3 or 4 stars was a victory. But 13? That wasn't just a pill. That was a holy relic. That was a catalyst for war. This boy hadn't been bragging. He had taken the master's life work and made it look like the fumbling of a child. Wu Songlin's record was a 9. Ling Han had just shattered the ceiling of what was thought possible. Young man. Look at me. Wu Songlin's eyes were manic, glowing with a hunger that rivaled Hu Niu's. He lunged forward, grabbing Ling Han's hands like a beggar clutching at gold. That technique. Was that truly the 3 Fire Guide? It was, Ling Han said, his voice flat and unimpressed. The two old masters gasped, the sound echoing like a death rattle in the silent courtyard. The 3 Fire Guide was a ghost story. A myth whispered in the halls of ancient libraries. To see it in the hands of a teenager was like seeing a god walk among mortals. Accept me as your master, Wu Songlin shrieked, desperate to claim him. I will pour every resource of this academy into you. I guarantee you'll reach the Earth grade. Get bent, old man Wu. Fu Yuansheng shoved him aside, his dignity forgotten in the dirt. Take me as your master. I am the pavilion master of the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. I have vaults of herbs you can't even dream of. You can burn through a mountain of ingredients a day if you want. You senile vulture. This is my academy, he is my student, Wu Songlin roared, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. He doesn't even know your name, how can he be your student? Fu Yuansheng spat back. He turned to Ling Han, his face instantly shifting into a sickeningly sweet, desperate smile. What is your name, young genius? Li Si-chan watched, paralyzed. These were the 2 most powerful alchemists in the nation. Men who could make the emperor wait in the hall. And here they were, clawing at each other like street thugs over a boy who hadn't even registered for classes yet. Ling Han, he replied simply. I'm a freshman. Huh? He's mine. Wu Songlin crowed, waving Fu Yuansheng away as if he were a stray dog. Go back to your pavilion and rot. I have no time for drinks today. Being a student here doesn't mean he can't have a real master from the pavilion, Fu Yuansheng countered. Young man, what do you say? The 2 old men were inches from a physical brawl, their friendship of decades evaporating in the heat of their greed. Masters. Please, Li Si-chan interrupted, her voice small. Why don't you both just accept him as a joint disciple? Brilliant. The 2 old men froze, looking at each other. It was the perfect compromise. They turned back to Ling Han, expecting him to drop to his knees in gratitude. Ling Han let out a faint, cold smile. I don't think either of you has anything left to teach me. The silence that followed was deafening. Li Si-chan's jaw dropped. Arrogance. No, this was madness. These were the twin peaks of Rain Country's alchemy. Even if he could forge a 13-star storm pill, that was just a mid-level yellow grade. How could he be so delusional? The old master's faces darkened. A genius who is too proud to learn is just a bright flame that burns out in a heartbeat. However, Ling Han continued, ignoring their scowls, we could discuss theory. We can learn from one another as equals. Equal? It was an insult. Ling Han, the former Alchemy Emperor, was being more than humble. He was being saintly. In his past life, Earth-grade masters weren't even allowed to breathe the same air while he worked. But then, he began to speak. At first, it was basic common sense. Then, the depth of his words began to sink in. His voice was young, but the knowledge was ancient. He began to dissect the very soul of alchemy, explaining the chemical marriages of herbs and the temperament of fire in ways they had never imagined. The two masters went from indifferent to serious, then from serious to frantic. Soon, they weren't debating, they were taking notes. They were asking him questions about problems they had struggled with for decades. Li Si-chan watched the transition with a numb, hollow feeling in her chest. If you closed your eyes, you weren't listening to a boy. You were listening to a god. She, the twin pearl of the city, felt like a clumsy apprentice who hadn't even learned how to hold a spoon. There is no age in learning, Fu Yuansheng whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I thought you were arrogant. But it was my own pride that blinded me. Your understanding makes us look like children. You will be an Earth-grade master. No, a heaven-grade legend. You have opened a door I thought was locked forever, Wu Songlin added, his voice trembling. He stood up and bowed deeply. A full, formal bow to a boy half his age. Many thanks, teacher. Many thanks, teacher, Fu Yuansheng echoed, bowing just as low. Li Si-chan stood in the shadows, her mind shattered. These two men were second only to the emperor, yet here they were, bowing in the dirt to a boy with a snoring girl in his lap. If the world saw this, the foundations of Rain Country would crumble. Ling Han accepted their bows without a shred of guilt or hesitation. He had just handed these two men the keys to a kingdom they hadn't dared to dream of entering, the rank of Earth-grade alchemist. Without his intervention, they would have spent the rest of their lives rotting at the ceiling of the black grade. He was, for all intents and purposes, their master. To receive their reverence was simply his due. If young Master Han ever faces a struggle in this city, come to the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. You need only ask, Fu Yuansheng said, his voice heavy with a newfound solemnity. He didn't dare call Ling Han young friend anymore. The boy was a giant in a child's skin. Wu Songlin remained silent, but his eyes promised enough. Ling Han was in his academy now. No one would lay a finger on him within these walls. Ling Han let a small, sharp smile touch his lips. He wasn't a saint, he was a pragmatist. He had traded ancient secrets for the two most powerful shields in the imperial city. From this moment on, the rules of this city would bend for him. Fu Yuansheng hurriedly excused himself, his mind already churning with the revolutionary theories Ling Han had planted. He needed to find a furnace and a quiet room before his brain exploded from the sheer weight of the knowledge. Old man Wu, give me back my student. A roar shook the courtyard as another elder barged in, followed by the trembling enrollment teacher. This was Lian Guangzhu, headmaster of the martial arts department. Your student? Wu Songlin's face instantly twisted into a scowl. He's a genius of the alchemy department. When did he become one of your meat-headed martial artists? In Huyang Academy, the martial arts department was the titan, while alchemy was a niche corner for the few. But to Wu Songlin, Ling Han's mind was a national treasure that belonged behind a furnace, not on a battlefield. Nonsense. The boy's battle prowess is legendary. Forcing him to cook pills is a criminal waste of talent. Lian Guangzhu stomped forward until his finger was practically shoved up Wu Songlin's nose. You're the one talking trash. His understanding of alchemy has no precedent in history. To make him swing a sword is to spit in the face of the heavens. Wu Songlin jabbed his finger right back at Lian Guangzhu's forehead. Don't you point that finger at me, you old goat. You started it, withdraw yours first, like hell, you first. Combined, the two men were over 150 years old, yet they stood there like two stubborn, snarling bulls, their eyes bulging with a rage that would have terrified any normal man. Li Si-chan pressed a palm to her forehead, exhausted. These two had been friends for decades, which apparently meant they spent every waking hour trying to tear each other's throats out over the smallest trifles. The enrollment teacher, meanwhile, looked like he was about to faint. He knew Ling Han was special, but to see the two pillars of the academy nearly coming to blows over which department got to claim him, it was insane. This kid isn't just going to survive in the academy, he realized, he's going to own the damn place. I'm not wasting my breath on you, Lian Guangzhu growled, suddenly lunging to grab Ling Han's left shoulder. He's a martial arts disciple. I'm taking him. Over my dead body. Wu Songlin snatched Ling Han's right shoulder. He is the future of the Alchemist Guild. I won't let you lead him astray. Let go. You let go. They began to play tug-of-war with Ling Han's body, pulling with enough restraint not to rip him in half, but with enough desperation to turn the air blue with their gasping. Two spiritual pedestal tier masters, the most revered men in the country, fighting over a teenager like a scrap of meat. Nearby, Hu Niu let out a massive, satisfied burp. She didn't care about departments, she only cared that the food had been excellent. Young Master Han, Wu Songlin wheezed, looking at Ling Han with pleading eyes. Tell this old fool the truth. You belong in the alchemy department, researching the mysteries of the universe, right? Don't listen to him, Lien Guangzhu barked. He hadn't even processed that Wu Songlin was calling the boy, young master. You want to be a warrior, you want power. Young Master Han, Wu Songlin interrupted, his voice dripping with desperation. If you join the alchemy department today, I will personally grant you 1,000 academic points. 1,000 points? Li Si-chan and the teacher froze. 1,000 points could buy a king's ransom in techniques, pills, and treasures. Even a star pupil like Lu Yutong hadn't earned that much in her entire career. Wu, you can't just hand out points like candy. There are regulations, Lien Guangzhu screamed. Regulations? Wu Songlin smirked. He just recovered a lost 13-star storm pill formula. That contribution alone is worth 1,000 points. Can you match that? Lien Guangzhu started to sweat. Ling Han was a combat god, but he hadn't contributed anything to the martial department yet. He had no leverage. He looked like he was about to cry from pure frustration. Finally, Ling Han spoke, his voice calm and bored. I'll just join both. The silence was instant. In this world, you picked a path. To try and master both was to fail at both. It was common knowledge. I'm a genius, Ling Han added with a level of shameless confidence that made Li Si-chan's mouth hang open. It won't be an issue. The two old men looked at him, then at each other. Ordinarily, they would have laughed in the face of such arrogance. But after seeing a 13-star pill and the 3-fire guide, they couldn't find the breath to argue. You're sure? They asked in unison. I'm positive, Ling Han smiled. Fine, so be it. The two old men barked in unison, nodding with a sharp, begrudging finality. They had been brothers in arms for a lifetime. Despite the vitriol they had just spat at each other, neither was truly willing to sever the bond over a single student. This was the only way to end the madness. Take it. This is the crest of my alchemy department, Wu Songlin said, shoving an iron plaque into Ling Han's hand. Keep it on you. With this, you walk through my halls as if they were your own. Old man Wu, this kid just arrived today. I'm taking him to the martial arts wing to get him registered and find him a place to sleep. We're done here, Lien Guangzhu grunted, seizing Ling Han by the arm and dragging him away before another word could be spoken. Lien Guangzhu hauled Ling Han across the campus at a breakneck pace. Only when they were deep in the martial arts territory did he stop, whirled on the enrollment teacher, and snarled, "Why the hell did you let this boy wander into Wu's den in the first place?" The teacher looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole. How was he supposed to know the kid was a restless ghost? He'd only been gone for a heartbeat. But he knew better than to argue with a headmaster. He just bowed his head, swallowing the shame. Fortunately, Lien Guangzhu was just venting his adrenaline, not looking for a head to roll. Look at him, Lien Guangzhu muttered, his eyes burning with a feverish light. He crushed Qi Yongyi as a mere 4th-layer brat. 12 battle stars. 8 stars above his own rank. Even Qin Yi can't touch that kind of raw, terrifying potential. A martial god like this. Wasting his life over a bubbling pot of pills? I won't have it. If Wu Songlin could see the look on Lien Guangzhu's face right now, he would have known the old man was brewing something toxic. Put him in the most desolate, remote hole you can find, Lien Guangzhu whispered to the teacher. And assign him to that teacher. The one with no disciples. We have to hide him. Wu cannot find him. The man was a goddamn snake. The enrollment teacher broke into a cold sweat. He had no choice but to obey, but the weight of the secret felt like a noose. Wu Songlin wasn't just a headmaster, he was a black-grade alchemist. In this country, he was a king in all but name. If he found out he'd been played, the fallout would be nuclear. Lien Guangzhu saw the fear in the teacher's eyes and smirked. When you're done, take a 6-month vacation. Full pay. Just vanish. The teacher's eyes lit up. It was a lifeline. He could disappear until the storm blew over and get paid for the privilege. Yes, sir, I know just the place, old Mo. The Grave of Swords, Old Mo? Ling Han asked, shifting Hu Niu to his other arm. He carried a pathetic bundle of clothes, all that remained of his life. Mo Gao, the teacher explained, his voice hushed. He was once the crown jewel of the martial arts wing. Then, he lost his mind. He became obsessed with creating the ultimate sword art. He stopped advancing, stopped living. His cultivation stalled out completely. The headmaster only kept him on out of pity. But don't worry about his rank. The headmaster plans to train you himself in secret. They reached a place that felt more like a graveyard than a residence. The courtyards were crumbling ruins, the air thick with the smell of decay and forgotten dreams. Waist-high weeds choked the pathways, as if nature was trying to reclaim the stones. Pung, 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 the teacher hammered on a rotting door. Who is it? A hollow voice drifted out. Old Mo, it's me. The door creaked open, revealing a man who looked like he had crawled out of a cave. He was barely 40, but his face was a thicket of unkempt beard and grime. He looked 70, he looked dead. What? If it's not life or death, I have swords to swing, Mo Gao muttered, his eyes unfocused. I brought you a student, Ling Han, he's all yours. Bye. The teacher turned and bolted as if his heels were on fire. He wasn't sticking around for the awkwardness, or for Wu Song Lin to catch him. Ling Han and Mo Gao stared at each other in a heavy, suffocating silence. Finally, the man grunted. I'm a teacher. I don't decline orders. Follow me for sword practice, or don't. Fine by me, Ling Han said, his voice equally cold. The houses nearby are all trash. Pick one. Sleep in the dirt if you want, Mo Gao said, turning his back. The door stays open. Come in when you want, but if you breathe while I'm practicing my steel, I'll kill you. Ling Han shrugged and led Hu Niu toward the least dilapidated ruin. It was a hellhole. Dust lay an inch thick over everything. Ling Han started the grueling task of making it habitable. Hu Niu tried to help, but only succeeded in kicking up clouds of filth until her face was a smeared mask of gray. Ling Han couldn't help it. He let out a raw, genuine laugh. By dusk, they had cleared one room. Anyone alive in there? A voice called out. A teenager stood at the gate with a handcart carrying a meager sack of rice and a few limp vegetables. Meat! 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 Hu Niu screamed, lunging forward like a starving wolf. The delivery boy shrieked, falling onto his ass in terror. Ling Han pulled the boy up. How long is this supposed to last? 10 days, the boy stammered, his eyes darting to the feral little girl. Ling Han shook his head. This won't last us through the night. It's barely a snack for her. 1 day? Are you insane? The boy looked at Ling Han, searching for the massive stomach that could hold 10 days of rations. Just bring the food. I have the gold, Ling Han said, his smile not reaching his eyes. The boy unloaded the cart and fled. Hu Niu began pacing around the rice sack, her teeth bared in impatience. Not yet, Niu. We aren't eating this garbage tonight, Ling Han laughed. We're going into the city. We need blankets, clothes, and a real meal. Meat, meat, meat. The girl began to howl with delight, her anger vanishing in an instant. Ling Han took her hand, forcing her to walk upright. He was determined to break her of the habit of scurrying on all fours, even if it took a lifetime. As they neared the academy gates, the air suddenly crackled with a different kind of energy. Get over here. Look. Zhu Wuju is challenging Nangang Ji, a student screamed, sprinting past them. The calm of the academy was over. The violence of the elite had begun. Ling Han's blood began to simmer, a dark, heavy pull drawing him into the wake of the surging crowd. The air was thick with the scent of impending violence and the low, jagged murmurs of 100 students. As he followed, the story of the two combatants began to coalesce. A tale of betrayal, grief, and a hatred so raw it had become a ritual of pain. Zhu Wuju and Nangang Ji. Both were ordinary disciples, but the gap between them was a chasm of status and silver. Nangang Ji was a predator of the top 10, a man destined for the true disciples, backed by the sprawling influence of the Nangang clan. Zhu Wuju was a ghost by comparison, poor, less talented, but fueled by a singular, obsessive purpose. Why does he keep doing this? He's just throwing himself into a meat grinder. He has to. Nangang Ji butchered his heart years ago. During a training trip, Nangang sacrificed Han Wan, Zhu Wuju's lover, to save his own pathetic hide. He wounded her with his own steel just to slow the beasts down while he fled. She was torn apart, and Zhu Wuju has been a dead man walking ever since. But Nangang Ji is the 5th young master of the Nangang clan. His brother is a true disciple at the Gushing Spring tier. Zhu Wuju has nothing but a low-grade earth spirit base. He loses every year. Last year, he was barely a breathing corpse when they carried him off the field. Ling Han listened, and a cold curiosity took root. To seek out a slaughter every year for 4 years. That wasn't just perseverance. That was something else. They reached the martial training court. The crowd fanned out, leaving a hollow space of dust and stone. Standing in the center was a man who looked like he had been forged in a furnace of sorrow. He was mid-20s, tall, with a sword strapped to his back. He wasn't handsome. His face was a map of old scars and hard lines. And his eyes held a gaze so terrifyingly intense that most turned away in shame. Fifth time, someone whispered. 5 years of seeking a death he can't seem to find. Ling Han's eyes narrowed, his pupils dilating as he scanned the man. A grin, sharp and predatory, touched his lips. Special constitution, he realized. Faint ripples of silver light. The ability to survive wounds that should have rotted his soul. This isn't just luck. He's a survivor of the Silver Moon race. The Silver Moon race. Their bodies were living miracles of regeneration, and their curse. 10,000 years ago, they were hunted like animals, their flesh and bone harvested to be boiled into healing pills. Ling Han remembered the Silver Moon King, a friend he had been too weak to save when his race was being systematically exterminated. For the sake of the king, I won't let this one burn out, Ling Han thought, his resolve hardening like cooling iron. Ha ha ha. Zhu Wuju. How many times do I have to break your bones before you realize you are nothing? Nangongji swaggered into the court, his presence a suffocating weight of arrogance. Peak 9th layer of the element gathering tier. He was a mountain of polished silver and ego. Zhu Wuju, at the 7th layer, looked like a stray dog before a wolf. But the dog had teeth. Shut your mouth and draw, Zhu Wuju rasped, his voice like grinding stones. Ding! 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 The air exploded with the scream of clashing steel. Nangongji moved with a casual, mocking elegance, his blade weaving a web of derision. He taunted Zhu Wuju, spitting insults to rot his focus, but beneath the mask, Nangongji was sweating. He was terrified. He had killed this man 4 times. He had left him with wounds that should have put him in the dirt within days. Yet, every time, the ghost returned. Nangongji knew he couldn't let this continue. If Zhu Wuju lived, he would be a shadow over his heart, a barrier that would stop him from ever reaching the gushing spring tier. Today, the accident had to be final. He waited. He baited the desperate man, and then, he saw it. Shadow dance sword arts. Nangongji's sword blurred into 3 lethal flashes of cold light, a high-level earth-grade technique he had hoarded his points to buy. He lunged for Zhu Wuju's heart with a silent scream of, die. Shoo! Zhu Wuju swung his blade in a desperate arc. 2 flashes of cold light erupted, not from the steel, but from the air itself. Sword chi. The crowd roared. Pooh! Pooh! The sound of steel meeting flesh was sickeningly wet. Nangongji's sword buried itself deep in Zhu Wuju's gut, a fountain of blood drenching the stone. But Zhu Wuju's sword chi had found its mark, too, tearing a jagged, crimson line across Nangongji's throat. Nangongji's eyes went wild with murderous hate. He didn't check his own wound. He gripped his hilt with both hands and lunged again at the staggering, bleeding man. He wanted his head. He wanted the silence of the grave. Shua! A flash of light faster than a heartbeat intercepted the strike. Ling Han was there, his own sword a wall of cold, unyielding iron. The blades collided with a bone-jarring ding, the sheer force of the impact vibrating through the stone. Nangongji recoiled, his face contorting into a mask of pure, murderous loathing. Who the hell are you to crawl into my business? He spat, his voice trembling with rage. Interfering in a duel is a crime. Do you have a death wish? Ling Han didn't flinch. A razor-sharp smile played on his lips. He's done. The fight is over, he said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous rumble. But if you're so desperate for blood, I'm right here. I'd be more than happy to teach you exactly how insignificant you are. Nangongji's eyes burned. He had seen the flicker of sword chi from Zhu Wuju. He knew the man was becoming a monster he couldn't control. He had been seconds away from snuffing that threat out forever. Brat! He hissed, the threat dripping like venom. Those who stick their noses where they don't belong usually end up without a face. Battle me now or crawl back to your hole, Ling Han countered, his voice dripping with pure disdain. Stop barking and move. Nangongji hesitated. He could feel the weight of Ling Han's strike still humming in his own arm. This newcomer was no weakling. He was a cautious serpent, and he wouldn't strike until he knew exactly whose throat he was biting. With a final, jagged glare, he turned and stormed off. The crowd erupted in hushed, panicked whispers. Who is that? He just stared down a Nangong. A 5th layer freshman. How did he scare off a peak 9th layer elite? Doesn't matter. He's a dead man. The Nangong clan doesn't forget, and Nangong Xing is a true disciple. We need to stay away from him unless we want to be buried in the same grave. The courtyard emptied in heartbeats, leaving only the iron-scented air and a dying man. Zhu Wuju hauled himself up, every movement a symphony of agony. The silver moon blood in his veins was already screaming, knitting his flesh back together at a rate that would baffle a normal doctor, but he was still far too weak to tap into its true, divine power. Why? Zhu Wuju rasped, coughing up a spray of crimson. The Nangong clan will skin you alive for this. Maybe I just hate seeing trash win, Ling Han said. I don't believe in fairy tales. Zhu Wuju shook his head, his gaze hollow. I have nothing. No gold, no status. You're wasting your time if you're looking for a payout. Then, Ling Han leaned in, his eyes locking onto the survivors. Become mine, be my subordinate. Zhu Wuju didn't even blink. I'll find a way to pay you back for the life you saved today. But I bowed to no one. He turned to limp away into the shadows. So that's it? You're giving up on your revenge? Zhu Wuju froze. The word revenge hit him like a physical blow. I can train you. Ling Han's voice was a brutal promise. In 6 months, I will put Nangong Ji's life in the palm of your hand. You will surpass him, and you will tear him apart yourself. Zhu Wuju spun around, his eyes wide and bloodshot. You're serious? Look at me. What do I gain by lying to a pauper? The silence stretched, heavy with the weight of a life and death pact. Fine, Zhu Wuju croaked. 6 months. If I haven't surpassed him by then, consider today's debt paid. If I have, my life belongs to you, body and soul. Ling Han nodded. He reached out and whispered the forbidden verses of the Silver Moon Arts, an Earth-grade high-level technique lost to the tides of time, designed specifically to turn the Silver Moon Constitution into a weapon of mass destruction. To Zhu Wuju, it was just a strange set of instructions. To Ling Han, it was a debt paid to an ancient king. Go. Heal. When you're ready, we begin. Meet. Meet. Hu Niu screamed, yanking on Ling Han's sleeve with feral impatience. All right, you little monster. Let's go find a carcass, Ling Han laughed. Ling Han. Brother Ling. 4 familiar faces emerged from the evening gloom. Qi Yongyi, Jin Wuji, Baili Teng Yun, and Li Dongyu. The Da Yuan crew was back together. You're late, you bastard, Baili Teng Yun roared. 10 cups of wine, that's your penalty. Meet. 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 Hu Niu began her rhythmic chanting, jumping like a pouncing cat. The group hit the nearest tavern, the air soon thick with the smell of roasting fat and cheap ale. But the reunion was a massacre. Every time a plate of meat touched the table, it vanished. Hu Niu didn't use chopsticks. She used her claws. She was a blur of teeth and hunger, leaving the 4 geniuses staring at empty, grease-stained platters in shocked silence. Is her stomach a black hole? Jin Wuji whispered, staring at the tiny girl who had just eaten her body weight in pork. The laughter eventually died down as the reality of the academy set in. I'm jealous, Ling Han, Li Dongyu sighed, staring into his cup. A true disciple on day 1? The resources you're going to get. It's a different world. Qi Yongyi nodded grimly. The gap between us and the elite is a canyon. I thought I was close to Feng Yan, but now, I'm just a speck of dust. Ling Han, Qi Yongyi said, his voice suddenly dropping into a warning. Be careful. Feng Luo is here. He's small time, but he's a spiteful rat. He'll go running to Feng Yan to have you erased. Don't underestimate them. Feng Yan. A predatory smile tugged at the corners of Ling Han's mouth. Tell me, just how much power has he managed to scrape together? No one knows for sure, and that's the problem. Qi Yongyi's voice was leaden with dread. The last time he set foot in the academy, he was already carving his way through the 4th layer of the gushing spring tier. And it's not just the cultivation. Someone saw him in the ruins of an ancient site. He's formed 4 flashes of saber qi. The man is a butcher. 4th layer of gushing spring. That put him ahead above even the one-armed freak, Kan Yi. In the brutal hierarchy of the core disciples, power was the only currency, and Feng Yan was clearly amassing a fortune in blood. Change of subject, Jin Wuji cut in, sensing the suffocating tension. I just got word that the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion is hosting an auction tonight. Anyone have the stomach for it? Spiritual Treasures Pavilion? Ling Han asked. The most mysterious auction house in the Imperial City, Jin Wuji explained. The owner is a ghost. No one knows their face, their age, or even if they're human. But one thing is certain. They are untouchable. Not even the high and mighty dare to spit on their doorstep. It's not that they don't dare, Qi Yongyi corrected, his royal blood giving him a clearer view of the carnage. It's that everyone who tried is currently decorating a grave. People stopped making trouble because the pavilion stopped leaving survivors. Ling Han's eyes glinted. Interesting, let's go. If he could find the rare catalysts for a restore spirit pill, he could finally fix his father's shattered foundation. But there was a wall in his way. His current cultivation was too weak. To forge the pills his father needed, he required heat, intense, soul-searing heat that his current puny flames couldn't produce. Father doesn't have forever, Ling Han thought, a cold urgency tightening in his chest. I either find a master to do the dirty work, or I hunt down a strange fire of heaven and earth. Strange fires were myths made manifest, primordial energies that could turn a mediocre alchemist into a god. Ling Han had never seen one in his past life, but 10,000 years of tectonic shifts might have vomited one into the light. Without it, he was stuck. The best alchemist in this pathetic country was only black grade. They weren't fit to even wash the cauldron for an earth grade pill. They reached the spiritual treasures pavilion on foot, 20 minutes of walking through the sharpening night air. This was the graveyard of fortunes, where weapons, techniques, and rare herbs were traded for astronomical sums. Tonight was only a monthly auction, but the hunger in the crowd was palpable. Just as they approached the gates, two figures blocked their path. They walked with the oily confidence of the entitled. You. The voice was a jagged rasp of hatred. Ling Han looked up to see Feng Luo. The coward had actually managed to slink his way into the academy, and even more surprising, he had broken through to the element gathering tier. Likely a gift from his brother, pills used to force a breakthrough for a talentless hack. Feng Luo pointed a shaking finger at Ling Han's face, his eyes wide with manic glee. You didn't think I'd make it, did you? You piece of trash? I'm in the academy, I've broken through, and… Lower your finger, Ling Han interrupted, his voice like the click of a crossbow. Do it now, or I'll snap it off and feed it to you. Feng Luo flinched. The memory of Ling Han's brutality was a fresh wound in his mind. He pulled his hand back, but his mouth kept running. Keep acting tough. You stole my spot, but my brother found another. Your days of peace are over, Ling Han. I am going to destroy everything you love. Ling Han let out a dry, mirthless laugh. Idiots who threaten me usually end up as fertilizer. You want to be next? Such arrogance. The young man beside Feng Luo stepped forward. His nostrils were flared so high he was practically looking at the stars. I've seen plenty of loudmouths in this city, but you're a special kind of stupid. Hee, Ling Han, you have no idea who you're talking to, do you? Feng Luo sneered, preening beside his companion. This is Wei Yila. A true star of the academy. A man who will be a black-grade alchemist before you even learn to read. Jin Wuji let out a sharp, hissed breath. Wei Yila, the alchemy prodigy? Is he dangerous? Bai Li Tengyun asked, confused. He's only at the first layer of element gathering. I could snap him like a twig. It's not his fists, you idiot, Jin Wuji whispered, his face pale. He's a yellow-grade high-level alchemist. Rumor has it the headmaster of the alchemy department himself is looking to take him as a personal disciple. In this country, that makes him royalty. Bai Li Tengyun and Li Dongyu froze. A disciple of the Grand Master? That meant even the city's generals would have to bow to him. Ha 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 ha. Wei Yili's laughter was a serrated blade. He basked in their fear for a long, agonizing moment before turning his disdainful gaze on Ling Han. I don't give a damn about your petty squabbles with young Master Luo, but I've seen enough. He stepped closer, his voice dropping into a guttural, commanding growl. Kneel down. Now, and lick the dirt off young Master Luo's boots. Feng Luo trembled with excitement. With a future Grandmaster backing him, Ling Han was trapped. If he didn't submit, he wasn't just fighting a student. He was declaring war on the entire alchemist guild. Do it, Ling Han, Feng Luo hissed, his face twisted with malice. Or I'll make sure you never leave this street alive. The air curdled with a suffocating, murderous tension. Qi Yongyi and the others stood frozen, their blood boiling in their veins. To demand that a man kneel and lick the filth from another's boots? It was an insult that demanded a payment in blood. If Wei Yula were a gushing spring powerhouse or a black-grade alchemist, perhaps his arrogance would have a foundation. But he was a mere yellow-grade bottom dweller, a first-layer weakling. Where did he find the goddamn nerve to bark such orders? In this imperial city, even the gnats thought they were dragons. You've crossed a line, Jin Wuji roared, his knuckles widening. Wei Hila, you're a low-level scrap of an alchemist. Don't you think your mouth is a bit too big for your head? You dare challenge me? Wei Li's smile was a jagged blade of confidence. He knew his worth. He was a gamble on the future, a rising star. Why else would Feng Luo crawl to him? And why would he tolerate a brat like Feng Luo if not for the shadow of Feng Yan? In this world, the strong ruled, but even the strongest blade eventually needed the medicine only a master alchemist could forge. Jin Wuji's hand twitched with the urge to crush the boy's skull. He could dominate Wei Hila with one hand tied behind his back. The boy's cultivation was a hollow shell built on pills. But the shadow loomed. The rumor that Wu Songlin, the black-grade high-level titan, was set to claim him. They had bowed to Ling Han in the past because of two lowly black-grade alchemists, but Wu Songlin was a god compared to them. The pressure was a physical weight, choking the words in Jin Wuji's throat. Who do you think you are? Baili Tengyun snapped. He was young, hot-blooded, and a foreigner to this city. He didn't care about the politics of tomorrow. If a man insulted his brother today, he deserved to bleed. Wei Li's face darkened. Are you challenging me, boy? So what if I am? Do you have the spine to step up? Young Master Wei. The air shifted as three figures stepped into the light. Their auras were heavy, suffocating. 3 ninth-layer element gathering elites. Ah, you're here, Wei Hila said, a perfunctory, cold smirk crossing his face. Young Master Wei, do we have a problem here? The leader asked. A tall man in green battle robes named Wen Haixing. He looked at Baili Tengyun like he was a bug under a boot. Wei Hila pointed a lazy, mocking finger. This idiot thinks he can challenge me. Ha 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 ha. Where did this suicidal clown come from? Wen Haixing stepped forward, crooking a finger at Baili Tengyun. Come on, then. I'll be your executioner. Baili Tengyun lunged, but Qi Yongyi caught his shoulder, his voice a low growl. Wen Haixing. Have you lost your mind? A top 100 elite bullying a freshman? Have you no shame? Ah, the king of eternal night. Wen Haixing sneered, mockingly clasping his hands. No wonder this group is so loud. The fourth prince of Da Yuan certainly is domineering. Wei Li's eyes narrowed. A noble? No wonder you're so full of yourself. He had been pampered since birth for his talent. He had no patience for royalty that didn't bow to his genius. Ling Han, on your knees. Now, Feng Luo screamed, sensing the kill. He didn't care about the princes. He wanted Ling Han's soul crushed in the dirt. So this is Feng Yan's little brother, Shen Yuzan, one of the ninth-layer trio, mused with a greasy smile. They looked down on Feng Luo, but they feared his brother. Brat, he said, turning to Ling Han, if you don't make young Master Luo happy, the only way you're leaving this street is on a stretcher. I Zhang Guang, say the same, the third added. Feng Luo was shaking with a sick, ecstatic pride. Do you see now, Ling Han? You're a nobody. One of my fingers is worth 10,000 of you. I'll humiliate you until there's nothing left. Wei Hila and the elites stood like a wall of cold iron. To them, Ling Han was just another provincial ant to be crushed. The guards of the spiritual treasures pavilion watched with hollow eyes. As long as the blood stayed off their carpets, they didn't care who died. Kneel, Feng Luo shrieked. Kneel to your sister. Ling Han moved. His hand was a blur of lethal intent, surging toward Feng Luo's throat. You dare! All 3 ninth-layer elites moved at once. A coordinated strike that should have pulverized a 5th-layer practitioner. Get out of my way. Ling Han's exiting cloud steps defied the laws of physics. He twisted through the gaps in their formation like a ghost through a keyhole. Wen Haixing and the others gasped, their strikes hitting empty air. They had underestimated his speed, thinking his low cultivation made him prey. Ling Han was already through. His hand closed the distance. You wouldn't. Wei Hila threw himself in front of Feng Luo, convinced his status as an alchemist made him an indestructible shield. He won't touch me, he doesn't have the PA. A thunderous slap sent Wei Hila spinning into the dirt. PA. Another slap caught Feng Luo, slamming him into the cobblestones. Before the coward could even scream, Ling Han's boot crashed down, pinning Feng Luo's face into the filth. Bastard, you're dead. My brother will slaughter you. I'll see you burned alive. Feng Luo wailed, his voice muffled by the mud. Wei Hila scrambled up, his face a mask of humiliated fury. He had been slapped? Him? A future grandmaster? You dead man? I will ruin you? Yi, Wei Hila. A young man and woman approached. The girl's eyes widened as she took in the chaotic, bloody scene. Elder sister Li. Wei Hila froze, his arrogance vanishing instantly. He stood straight, his hands at his sides, trembling with a sudden, desperate respect. It was Li Si-chan. Wei Yula could act like a god to the commoners, but before her, he was nothing. She was the true heart of the alchemy department, the one the headmaster actually loved. The young man flanking Li Si-chan took a predatory step forward, his face hardening into a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. Who among you is so suicidal that they think they can disrespect an alchemist? It's he Jun Chen. Qi Yongyi's voice was a sharp, urgent warning. A true disciple. Second layer of the gushing spring tier. Ling Han, watch yourself. Wei Yuli's humiliated face split into a sickening, triumphant grin. With a gushing spring powerhouse standing over him, the table had turned. He looked at He Jun Chen and pointed a trembling, dramatic finger at the boy with his boot on Feng Luo's head. Big brother this brat's arrogance is boundless. He was butchering young master Feng Luo, and when I tried to speak for justice, he slapped me into the dirt like I was a common dog. Oh, He Jun Chen's eyes narrowed into frozen slits of killing intent. I'd like to see the man who thinks he's that goddamn special. Ling Han. Li Si-chan's voice cut through the tension like a blade. She ignored the posturing elites and hurried toward him, her eyes wide with a strange, frantic energy. Where have you been? I've been scouring every corner of this city looking for you. The street went silent. A collective hiss of indrawn breath echoed through the crowd. The jewel of the academy was looking for this provincial newcomer? The way she said it, the raw desperation in her tone, sent a wave of shock through the spectators. He Jun Chen's face turned a violent shade of purple. He had worshipped Li Si-chan from afar for years, and hearing her speak to this boy with such urgent intimacy was like swallowing a mouthful of glass. No, wait, I mean. Li Si-chan caught the suffocating silence and realized how it sounded. Her face flushed as she hurriedly corrected herself. My master is the one looking for you. And what does he want with me? Ling Han asked, his voice as casual as if he were discussing the weather. He wants to invite you to tea. Who? The sound of people choking on their own spit was simultaneous. Who was Li Si-chan's master? Wu Songlin. The tyrant of the alchemy department. A man who could dismantle the 8 great clans with a flick of his wrist. A man who sat at the emperor's right hand. That man wanted to serve tea to a freshman? The crowd's minds were reeling. Only the titans of the country, the clan heads and pavilion masters, had ever shared a table with Wu Songlin. And here was Ling Han, a kid who looked like he'd just stepped off a farm, being summoned for an audience that most would kill to even witness. I don't have the time, Ling Han said flatly. Pooh. The second wave of choking was even more violent. Disbelief turned into a physical weight. Not even a clan head would dare say no to Wu Songlin. This boy hadn't just rejected an invitation, he had spat on the most coveted honor in the Rain Country. Qi Yongyi and the others were trembling, not with fear, but with a wild, manic joy. They had bet on a dragon. They knew Ling Han was special, but to see him treat a black-grade grandmaster like a minor inconvenience? It was intoxicating. Release me, damn you, I'll see your family flayed alive for this. Feng Luo's muffled screams continued from beneath Ling Han's boot. He was blind to the tectonic shift happening above him, his face still grinding into the mud. The atmosphere on the street didn't just change, it inverted. Wen Haixing and the other 9th layer elites, who moments ago were ready to send Ling Han home on a stretcher, were now cowering. Feng Yan's shadow was long, but it couldn't reach a man protected by Wu Songlin. Forgive us, junior brother Ling. We were blind, Wen Haixing stammered, his hands clasped in a desperate, shaking apology. We'll visit you soon to offer a proper, formal atonement. They shot Wei Yule a look of pure, concentrated hatred. The little alchemist had almost led them into a slaughterhouse. Ling Han gave a bored, dismissive wave. They didn't wait for a second word. They bolted, their dreams of the auction forgotten, replaced by the cold sweat of figuring out how to survive Ling Han's future wrath. Wei Yuli's face shifted through a kaleidoscope of terror and shame. He ground his teeth so hard they nearly cracked, then forced himself to step forward. Young Master Han. I was ignorant. Please, have the mercy to forgive my mistake. Who are you again? Ling Han asked, his eyes cold and empty. Wei Yula felt a surge of murderous spite. I'm the one you slapped. I'm the one apologizing. How dare you treat me like air? Junior brother, what is going on here? Li Si-chan's voice was like ice. She knew exactly what Ling Han meant to her master. He wasn't just a guest, he was a god in the field of alchemy. It's nothing, elder sister, Wei Yula lied through his teeth, trying to regain his footing. Just a small misunderstanding between Ling Han and young Master Luo. I was trying to mediate, but things got a bit heated. Deep down, a cynical theory took root in his mind. Li Si-chan is lying. She's using her master's name to protect her little boyfriend. There's no way the Grand Master would invite this trash for tea. Misunderstanding? Jin Wuji laughed, the sound sharp and brutal. You told him to kneel and lick the dirt off those shoes? What? Li Si-chan's gaze snapped away. Hila. She looked at him as if he were already a corpse. She knew her master's temper. If Wu Songlin heard that this brat had tried to humiliate Ling Han, Wei Yula wouldn't just lose his apprenticeship, he would be lucky to keep his hands. Elder sister, don't listen to their poison, Wei Yula barked, doubling down on his delusion. Ling Han. My face. Lift your damn foot, Feng Luo wailed, his voice cracking with humiliation. Ling Han looked down, a dark, jagged grin spreading across his face. He ground his heel down harder, eliciting a bone-chilling shriek of agony from Feng Luo. He looked at the horrified crowd and spoke with a terrifying, calm finality. Relax. I'm not going to kill him here. A collective shiver ran down the spines of everyone watching. He wasn't showing mercy, he was promising a private execution. Hu Niu's eyes were locked onto Feng Luo like a predator tracking a doomed beast. She could taste the sulfuric stench of his hatred for Ling Han. And it made her own killing intent spike to a fever pitch. Her gaze never left the soft, vulnerable line of his throat. She was calculating exactly how much pressure it would take to tear it out and end him permanently. Ling Han sensed the darkness rising in her. He reached out, hauling her into his arms. Don't, he said, his voice cold. He's too filthy for you to touch. Hu Niu bristled, her small frame tense with restrained violence, those feral eyes still glowing with a promise of slaughter. Crack. Ling Han didn't just step. He drove his heel into Feng Luo's mouth with a sickening, wet crunch. An earth-shaking wail erupted from the dirt. Feng Luo hacked and convulsed, spitting out a jagged slurry of blood and nearly a dozen shattered bone fragments. Ling Han had effectively erased every tooth in the boy's head with a single, brutal stomp. The agony was absolute. A white-hot nerve fire that screamed from his jaw straight into his soul. As Ling Han finally withdrew his foot, Feng Luo dragged himself upright, snot and blood painting his face. He looked around at the onlookers, his eyes brimming with a toxic, impotent lovelorn rage. They had watched him be mutilated and didn't lift a finger. Die, he thought. Every one of you deserves to rot. But he wasn't a fool. He knew he was outmatched. He cast one final, venomous look at Ling Han. A look that promised 1,000 years of vengeance, before turning and stumbling away. Wei Yula, realizing his shield was gone, didn't waste a second before scurrying after him. Qi Yongyi and the others watched them go, their brows furrowed. Ling Han. You've just declared a blood feud. There's no coming back from that, Qi Yongyi warned. But they all knew it didn't matter. The moment Ling Han's boot met Feng Luo's face, the war had begun. Ling Han didn't care. He had stood at the peak of the heaven tier in his past life. Why should he tremble before two pathetic rats? He would crush them when the time was right. The auction is starting. Let's get off the street, Qi Yongyi said, trying to shake off the chill. Let's go in together, Li Si-chan suggested, her voice soft but firm. The group froze. Even He Jun Chen looked as if he'd been slapped. This was Li Si-chan, the jewel of the imperial city. While Lu Yu Tong was an untouchable glacier, Li Si-chan was usually a polite, gentle breeze that nonetheless kept everyone at a distance. To see her actively invite a man to join her was a tectonic shift in the social order. He Jun Chen's heart rotted with jealousy. He had chased her for years, and now this provincial nobody was walking into her inner circle without even trying. Fine, Ling Han agreed, indifferent to the waves he was making. They entered the spiritual treasures pavilion. Inside, the power of a prince was nothing compared to the prestige of an alchemist. Li Si-chan led them straight to a lush, private VIP box. He Jun Chen tried to dig into Ling Han's background, searching for a noble lineage to explain this madness. When he found out Ling Han was from Grey Cloud Town, a speck of dust on the map, he nearly choked. How? Why would Wu Songlin want to drink tea with a peasant? Ling Han ignored the mental gymnastics happening around him. He was here for the treasures. 10,000 years had passed, and it seemed that geniuses of this era were idiots. If the dark moon grass was being wasted on purple origin pills, what other legendary medicines were being treated like weeds? The auction began. It was a minor event, but the prices still made Ling Han's jaw tighten. These people were throwing around silver as if it were gravel. I need to start refining, he realized. My 100,000 silver coins won't even buy the scraps at this rate. I don't know how many alchemists are in the house today, the auctioneer roared, but prepare yourselves for a true miracle. An attendant brought out a tray. 3 stalks of herb lay there, shimmering with a faint, starlit glow. Second star grass, someone shrieked. Valuable for alchemists, the auctioneer explained, but nearly useless for warriors. It's the key ingredient for the refreshing pill, which can restore mental exhaustion. For an alchemist mid-concoction, it is the difference between success and a wasted cauldron. Li Si-chan's eyes widened. Every alchemist lived in fear of their mental energy running dry during the complex refinement. Ling Han's eyes lit up too, but for a different reason. He wanted to scream at the sheer stupidity of this age. Refreshing pill? You're using second star grass for a temporary fix? In the ancient eras, second star grass was used for the second star pill, a medicine that didn't just replenish mental energy, it permanently strengthened the soul. It was a treasure that martial artists would kill for to bolster their divine sense. He turned to the girl beside him. Chan, let me have this grass. Li Si-chan bit her lip, torn. She needed that herb. She respected him, but the second star grass was a rarity she couldn't ignore. Ling Han leaned in, his voice a low, seductive whisper that made her heart skip a beat. Give it to me, and I will sell you a technique that lets you recover your mental energy 10 times faster than any pill ever could. What? Li Si-chan shrieked, jumping to her feet and forgetting every ounce of her refined composure. In the world of alchemy, it was a law of nature. Medicine could numb the pain, but only time could stitch back a shattered spirit. To hear Ling Han claim he held a technique that could force the spirit to recover, to bend the very laws of mental exhaustion, was like hearing a man claim he could command the sun to rise in the west. Li Si-chan felt the world tilt. Her heart hammered against her ribs, her poise dissolving into a frantic, wide-eyed shock. You bastard, what did you do to her? He Jun Chen's roar was thunderous, his face purple with a possessive, suffocating rage. Seeing the jewel of the academy, looking so utterly undone, he was certain Ling Han had whispered something foul or used some dark art to violate her mind. His jealousy had been simmering like a vat of acid, now, it finally boiled over. It's none of your business, Ling Han said, his voice flat and bored. Sit down and shut up. You dare speak to me like that? He Jun Chen exploded. He was a true disciple, a powerhouse of the gushing spring tier, and he was being dismissed by a peasant. He lunged forward, his fingers hooking into claws. Senior brother stop, Li Si-chan snapped, thrusting an arm out to bar his path. Her face was hard, her eyes flashing with a cold displeasure that froze him in his tracks. If this technique was real, it was worth more than every life in this room combined. It was a holy grail for alchemists. You're actually shielding him? He Jun Chen's voice cracked. To him, the betrayal was absolute. They were flirting in front of his face, and now she was playing bodyguard for her lover. You're the one being a mindless animal, she retorted. I'm the animal? He Jun Chen felt like his head was going to burst. You two are practically rutting in public, and I'm the one out of line? Shut up, you idiot, Ling Han sighed. He watched the auction stage where the bidding for the second star grass was already starting to spiral. He turned to Li Si-chan, his gaze sharp. Buy me that grass. Do it, and the technique is yours. Ling Han knew his own pockets were shallow. 100,000 silver coins was a joke in this arena. If he wanted those 3 stocks, he had to play his hand now and use this rich woman's fortune. It was a staggering price to pay. Even a low-grade spirit support technique was a priceless relic in a backwater like Rain Country. But the second star grass was the key to his own rapid advancement. He needed it more than he needed the secret. Li Si-chan stared at him, her chest heaving. If you're lying to me, if this is a trick. Look at me, Ling Han countered. Do I look like I have time for games? Li Si-chan hesitated for only a heartbeat. This boy had the backing of 2 black-grade grandmasters. He didn't make empty boasts. She nodded, her face hardening as she turned toward the auction floor. She was an alchemist, wealth was her birthright. Even at yellow grade, her coffers were deep. She began to bid with a cold, ruthless efficiency, her voice cutting through the air like a guillotine. Within minutes, she had driven the price up to a staggering 1,200,000 silver coins. Ling Han watched her with a faint nod of approval. Her success rate must be high, he mused. In alchemy, a high grade meant nothing if you turned every cauldron into ash. A master who failed 90% of the time was a pauper. A mid-level alchemist who succeeded every time was a king. He had once revolutionized the world with his 3-Fire Guide, earning the title of Alchemy Emperor by making success a certainty. Li Si-chan clearly had the talent to back up her ego. The hammer fell. The 3 stalks of second star grass were hers. The grass was delivered to the VIP box, the starlight from the leaves casting a pale glow on their faces. The technique first, Li Si-chan said, clutching the tray to her chest, then the grass. Ling Han's lip curled. You think I'd scam a little girl like you? Don't you, little girl, me. You're a year younger than I am, she shot back. She was terrified of being played. This was her hard-earned life savings she had just incinerated on his word. Fine. Let's get back to the academy. I need to get to work, Ling Han said, his blood already singing with the anticipation of refining the second star pill. The more mental energy he had, the longer he could cultivate. Every second gained was a step closer to his former glory. They left together, a strange trio of the boy, the beauty, and the feral child. Qi Yongyi and the others shared a knowing, smutty grin, watching them depart. But He Jun Chen stood in the shadows, his face like a mask of black stone. The killing intent radiating from him was a physical stench. Li Si-chan was his ticket to the peak. She was the perfect wife, a golden goose of alchemy. He is in my way, He Jun Chen thought, his hand trembling on the hilt of his sword, and I am going to erase him from existence. Back at the academy, inside the derelict walls of Ling Han's courtyard, the atmosphere turned solemn. He sent Hu Niu off to play and began to recite the major origin spirit replenishing technique. It wasn't a god-tier secret, in his past life, it was common knowledge among practitioners. But here, in this era of shadows and lost knowledge, it was a revelation. For any alchemist below the gushing spring tier, it was a miracle that could restore their soul in hours instead of days. Li Si-chan listened, her body literally shivering as the logic of the technique unfolded in her mind. It was elegant, it was brutal, it was perfect. Can I teach this to my master? She whispered, her voice trembling. Sure. Tell him it'll cost him 10 million silver coins, Ling Han said without blinking. What? You only charged me 1 million too? That's because you're beautiful, and it's a friends and family discount. Ling Han laughed, his eyes glinting with a touch of wit. Your master? Well, let's just say he's not exactly easy on the eyes. He pays the full retail price. Li Si-chan rolled her eyes, but a faint, genuine blush crept into her cheeks. She was hooked, and she knew it. Li Si-chan fled the scene like a woman who had just found religion, her heart hammered by a manic, desperate joy. Ling Han didn't watch her go. He collapsed onto his bed, every muscle in his body screaming for a reprieve. He hadn't planned on finding a treasure like the second star grass on his very first day in this concrete hive. The problem was as sharp as a blade. He had the heart of the pill, but he lacked the limbs, the supplementary ingredients to bind the medicine together. He was stuck. He would have to crawl through the gates of the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion the next morning to scavenge the rest. But there was work to be done. His courtyard was a ruin, an open wound in the academy's side. He needed to stay here for years, and he wasn't about to live like a dog. He began to map out the restrictions he would carve into the air and soil. Hidden traps of spiritual energy that would serve as his jagged teeth if any fool dared to trespass. Beside him, Hu Niu curled up like a great, feral cat. Her breathing slowed, but the tension never left her small frame. At the slightest twitch of a shadow, she would be awake, her lips pulled back to reveal bone-shearing teeth, a low growl vibrating in her chest. She wasn't a child, she was a hair-trigger. Ling Han closed his eyes. He knew Lu Yutong's reach, she would find him before the sun hit its peak. With that cold certainty, he drifted into a dreamless sleep. Morning broke, raw and biting. After a silent, heavy breakfast that barely satisfied Hu Niu's bottomless hunger, Ling Han headed out to pay his respects to his teacher. It was a hollow formality, a mask of respect for a system he had long since outgrown, but it was necessary. He pushed the door open to Mo Gao's quarters. The man was a statue. His right hand gripped a sword, his left locked in a rigid, complex gesture. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. He was a pillar of stone in a world of wind. Hu Niu dropped into a killing stance instantly. Her palms slammed into the dirt, her back arching like a mountain lion's. Her mouth was a jagged line of ferocity, her eyes burning with a primal terror. Ling Han froze. The girl only reacted like this when death was in the room. Was this old man, standing there like a fool, truly a threat? Then, it hit him. Ling Han's pupils dilated. His divine sense, even in its crippled state, felt a ripple in the air that shouldn't exist. It was an aura so ancient, so familiar, it made his skin crawl. It was coming from the blade. You've come, Mo Gao rasped, his voice like dry leaves. Then pick up a sword. Join me. What kind of technique is this? Ling Han asked, his voice barely a whisper. It is no technique, Mo Gao declared, and for a moment, he looked like a god of war. It is the sword of invincibility. Ling Han's heart skipped a beat. The air around Mo Gao was thickening, vibrating with a frequency that defied the laws of this backwater country. Invincibility doesn't exist, Ling Han countered. A sword in the hand of an invincible man is invincibility, Mo Gao roared. I am the blade. The heart of the sword is a blinding light. It pierces every lie, shatters every strike, and leaves nothing but the truth. Hong! Ling Han's mind exploded. A tsunami of realization crashed over him. Sword heart. That was it. That was the mystery. This broken, mad man wasn't a lunatic. He was a fanatic. He was cultivating the highest, most brutal comprehension of the blade. In a country where forming a single flash of sword chi made you a ruler, Mo Gao was reaching for the sun sword heart was a legend. It was the ability to see the world as a series of weaknesses to be exploited. With it, the gap between cultivation levels meant nothing. You could be a peasant and slaughter a king if your heart was a sword. Mo Gao hadn't gone mad 10 years ago. He had simply stepped onto a path that no one else could see. He had sacrificed a decade of progress, letting his cultivation rot at the 9th layer of element gathering, just to touch the hem of this divine power. A deep, jagged respect took root in Ling Han. Even in his past life as a heaven-tier titan, he had seen few men with this kind of suicidal dedication. He clasped his hands, bowing low. Please, teacher, show me the way. Mo Gao blinked, stunned. For 10 years, the world had laughed at him. He had doubted his own soul. And now, this boy looked at him with eyes that saw the truth. For the first time in a decade, the hermit felt a spark of human warmth. Listen well. Mo Gao began to speak, the words pouring out of him like a flood. The blade is a noble soul. It is devoid of filth, stripped of weakness. He ranted. He preached. He threw his decade of solitary suffering at Ling Han's feet. He didn't care if the boy understood, he just needed to scream his truth into the void. But Ling Han did understand. His heaven-tier soul drank in the words like parched earth. Mo Gao was close. He was a single, agonizing step away from the blinding light of the sword heart. In this wasteland of martial arts, he had found a masterpiece. Ling Han stood motionless, his mind a furnace, smelting Mo Gao's theories into pure power. This wasn't a technique you could find in a book. It was the core of the art itself. It was the path to godhood. Hu Niu, bored by the philosophy, slumped against a wall, her hands over her ears. Hey! Ling Han's sword cleared its sheath with a scream of metal. He spun in a blur of silver, his blade singing a song of slaughter. 5 flashes of sword chi erupted, dancing like lethal ghosts. Shua! 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 And then, with a sound like a needle-piercing silk, a 6th flash of sword chi materialized out of the void. It grew, it sharpened, it became a twin to the others. Ling Han lowered his blade, his chest heaving. He bowed to the old man, his voice thick with genuine emotion. Thank you, teacher. This was more than just a new flash of chi. Mo Gao had given him a map to the end of the world. He had come to this academy to play a part for his father, but he had stumbled into a treasure that would shave years off his climb back to the top. He hadn't just made a gain, he had stolen a miracle. Mo Gao was paralyzed with shock. In his cynical mind, any student shoved into his madhouse was a failure. Some brat who'd crawled through a back door and had no future. He'd only spent the morning preaching because the words had been rotting inside him for a decade, and he was desperate for a witness. He hadn't expected the boy to listen. He certainly hadn't expected the boy to understand. But Ling Han hadn't just understood. He had absorbed the lecture, stripped it of its fat, and forged a new flash of sword chi right in front of his eyes. A single flash would have been impressive, but 5? This boy already had 5 flashes of sword chi. In Rain Country, 3 flashes made you a king. 5 made you a legend. A genius of this caliber should be at the right hand of the headmaster, not rotting in a forgotten courtyard with a lunatic. Mo Gao couldn't wrap his head around it, but his confusion was quickly drowned out by a jagged, manic pride. This monster was his student. Teacher, Ling Han said, sheathing his blade with a crisp click. There are parts of your lecture that still feel clouded. On the grand scale of martial arts, Ling Han was a god among ants. But in the hyper-focused, obsessive realm of the blade, Mo Gao's decade of solitary madness had given him an edge. Ling Han knew it, and he wasn't too proud to bleed the man for every drop of knowledge he had. Speak, Mo Gao said, his voice trembling. No one had asked him a question in 10 years. Ling Han began to probe. He asked questions that hit the very marrow of the sword's soul, questions so deep they made Mo Gao gasp. For hours, they traded insights. Ling Han used his heaven-tier wisdom to refine Mo Gao's theories, and in return, Mo Gao's raw, instinctive genius sparked new fires in Ling Han's mind. By noon, Mo Gao let out a long, ragged sigh. Your talent. It dwarfs mine. I have no right to be your master. From now on, let us speak as brothers, as equals. Ling Han shook his head, his gaze steady. In the art of the sword, you are the one who opened the door for me today. Even if I surpass you 1,000 times over, I will never forget who handed me the key. Mo Gao was shaken to his core. He had expected arrogance from a genius. Instead, he found a loyalty as sharp as steel. Oh, Hu Niu whimpered, tugging violently at Ling Han's sleeve. Her stomach gave a predatory growl. All right, let's go feed the beast. Ling Han laughed, bidding Mo Gao a respectful farewell. They found a restaurant and ordered enough meat to sink a ship. But eating with Hu Niu was a combat sport. If you weren't fast enough, you'd be staring at an empty plate before the steam even cleared. By the time the bill came, Ling Han's heart skipped a beat. Over 1,000 silver coins, just for one lunch. The imperial city was a vacuum for gold, and Hu Niu was a bottomless pit. At this rate, he'd be a beggar within the week. He needed to refine. He needed to sell. He needed to remind this city who the Alchemy Emperor was. Holding Hu Niu's small, sticky hand, he navigated the winding streets until he stood before the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. It was a temple of wealth. 1,000 steps, wide as a river, climbed toward a golden hall that sat 300 meters above the city. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of 1,000 herbs and the quiet hum of immense power. A sweet-looking attendant named Xiao Ying approached them. Honorable customer, welcome. Are you looking for a specific pill? No pills. Just the raw ingredients, Ling Han said. He rattled off a list of high-grade catalysts for the second star pill. Xiao Ying's smile faltered as she calculated the tally. Honored guest. That comes to 320,000 silver coins. 320,000. Ling Han checked his pockets. He had maybe 100,000 and some change. He was short by a fortune, but the second star pill couldn't wait. Tell Fu Yuan Sheng that Ling Han is here to see him, he said calmly. Fu Yuan Sheng? Xiao Ying's voice cracked. She started to stutter, her eyes wide with terror. The pavilion master? You want to see the pavilion master? To her, the pavilion master was a god. Aside from the emperor himself, no one in the country held more sway. The heads of the 8 great clans would wait days just for a 5-minute audience. And here was a teenager in dusty clothes, demanding a meeting. Just tell him my name, Ling Han smiled. I promise you, he'll reward you for it. Xiao Ying didn't know what to believe. Ling Han looked like a kid, but there was a weight in his eyes that made her skin prickle. I can't see the master directly. I have to report to the branch manager first. Please, wait here. She scurried off. Ling Han sat, and Hu Niu mimicked him, climbing onto his lap and crossing her arms with an adorable, feral seriousness. Moments later, a man in his 40s stomped toward them, his face twisted in a sneer. Xiao Ying followed behind him, looking panicked. Brad, you're the one claiming to know our pavilion master? The manager spat, his eyes raking over Ling Han's cheap attire. He'd seen this before. Nobody's trying to use a big name to squeeze a discount. You got a lot of nerve. Ling Han's eyes went cold. Watch your tone. If you're broke, get the hell out of my shop. The man laughed, his voice booming through the hall. If you actually know the pavilion master, I'll eat this entire 10-meter display table, wood and all. Ling Han leaned back, a dangerous, mocking smile playing on his lips. I didn't realize you had such a bizarre diet. But if you're that hungry, it would be rude of me not to satisfy you. You're dead meat, kid, the manager hissed. Manager Yuan, Xiao Ying's voice was a frantic whisper, a desperate plea for sanity. Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was built on blood and gold, but its first commandment was absolute. Never, under any goddamn circumstances, insult a customer. Yuan Gang didn't even look at her. He waved a dismissive, meaty hand, his lip curling in disgust. Don't waste your breath. Someone get this pathetic brat out of my sight before he stinks up the hall. Xiao Ying went silent, her eyes brimming with a helpless, hollow pity for Ling Han and the child. She knew who Yuan Gang was. A bottom feeder who had spent 10 years scrubbing floors until his brother clawed his way into a yellow-grade mid-level alchemist rank. That single stroke of luck had inflated Yuan Gang's ego into a bloated, festering corpse of arrogance. He was a small man with a tiny bit of power, and he was starving to use it. 2 mountain-sized guards loomed behind Ling Han like shadows of death. Honored guest, one rumbled, his voice a thinly veiled threat. Walk, or we'll carry you. Ling Han let out a long, jagged sigh. Must I really paint this floor red? Ling Han. Ling Han. A sweet, piercing voice shattered the tension. Ling Han turned to see Qi Zhan Tai, the seventh princess of the Da Yuan king's house, hurrying toward him. And behind her, like two titans of the craft, were Zhu Yixin and Zhang Weishan. Yuan Gang didn't recognize the old men yet. He only saw the princess, a vision of high-born beauty. His eyes turned oily with lust. Well, he sneered at Ling Han. A gutter rat like you has a wife this stunning. Tell you what, boy. Lend her to me for a single night of play, and I'll give you 20% off. Maybe I'll even let you keep your teeth. Ha ha. Pa. The sound of the slap was like a whip cracking in the silence of a tomb. Yuan Gang's head snapped back, his feet tangled, and he hit the cold marble floor with a bone-jarring thud. Ling Han stood over him, his hands still vibrating with the force of the strike. You subhuman bastard, you actually dared to lay a hand on me? Yuan Gang screamed, scrambling to his feet, his face a distorted mask of murderous rage. So what? Are you made of glass? Zhang Weishan stepped into the light, a predatory, cold smile on his face. And who the hell are you? Yuan Gang's finger jabbed toward Zhang Weishan's nose, his mouth opening to vomit more insults. Then he froze. His gaze dropped to the silver badge pinned to the old man's chest. His heart stopped. His lungs seized. As a 10-year veteran of the pavilion, he knew that badge better than his own mother's face. A black-grade alchemist. Yes, sir. Yuan Gang's knees hit the floor so hard they audibly cracked. His arrogance evaporated into a sickening, groveling terror. His brother was a flea compared to this giant. Master, this man is filth. He was disgusting. Qi Zhan Tai spat, her face twisted in revulsion. Pooh! Yuan Gang felt like he was drowning in his own bile. This girl, the one he had just offered to buy for a night, was the disciple of a black-grade master? He was a dead man. He started hammering his own face with his fists. Pa! This lowly dog has a filthy mouth. I deserve to bleed, I deserve to die. Young friend Ling. Zhu Yixin stepped forward, and to the absolute horror of everyone watching, both black-grade masters bowed deeply, not to the guards, not to the princess, but to Ling Han. Grand Master Zhu. Yuan Gang's voice was a strangled wheeze. He recognized Zhu Yixin, the imperial city legend. To see a man of that stature bowing to the brat he just insulted, it was a nightmare made manifest. You're just in time, Ling Han said, a jagged smile playing on his lips. Go find Fu Yuan Sheng for me. Zhu Yixin shot a lethal look at Yuan Gang. Young friend, we don't need the pavilion master to crush a cockroach like this. One word from me and he disappears. Grand Master, mercy. I was blind. I was a fool, Yuan Gang wailed, dragging himself toward Ling Han's boots. Young Master Ling, please, be a god and show mercy just this once. Hee, did you forget? Ling Han's laughter was devoid of warmth. We have a bet. Grandmaster Zhu, please. Fetch Fu Yuan Sheng. I have business. Zhu Yixin hesitated, his voice dropping to a whisper. You actually know Grandmaster Fu? I do. Now go. Moments later, the air in the hall shifted. Fu Yuan Sheng, the king of the pavilion, was practically sprinting toward them, with Zhu Yixin trailing in his wake. Ha, young Master Ling. Forgive me for not being at the gates to crawl before you myself, Fu Yuan Sheng shouted, his voice thick with a respect that bordered on reverence. Yuan Gang's face went past pale. It turned the color of a week-old corpse. Fu Yuan Sheng, the man who stood equal to the emperor, was apologizing for his slight. Ling Han looked at the shivering manager. The bet, I believe I won. Yes, young master. You won. You're a god, Yuan Gang babbled, desperate to change the subject. Ling Han nodded slowly. Good, then start eating. What? The table, Ling Han said, his voice dropping to a low, brutal growl. Did I stutter? Or do you want me to have it braised or steamed first? Young master. You're such a joker. Yuan Gang's laugh was a pathetic, dry rattle. I joke with my friends, Ling Han said, his eyes like daggers. You are not my friend. What the hell is going on here? Fu Yuan Sheng roared, his patience snapping. He looked at Ling Han, the man who had shown him the path to the Earth Grade, and saw him being insulted in his own house. He didn't ask Yuan Gang. He looked at Xiao Ying. Yuan Gang's eyes were bulging, pleading with her to lie, to save him. But Xiao Ying didn't flinch. She laid out every insult, every disgusting offer, and every threat Yuan Gang had vomited. Fu Yuansheng's face turned a violent, bruised purple. He pointed a shaking finger at Yuan Gang's nose. You dare? You think you represent me? Since you like the taste of your own words so much, eat the damn table? Yuan Gang's jaw worked soundlessly. This wasn't a request. This was a command from the pavilion master. If he didn't do it, he wouldn't just be fired, he'd be erased from the map. He grabbed a table leg with a trembling hand. Pa! He ripped it off, shoved the wood into his mouth, and began to grind. Kacha! Kacha! The sound of wood splintering against teeth echoed through the hall. As a body refiner, he had the strength, but the humiliation was a poison worse than any splinter. The staff watched in grim, silent satisfaction as the bully choked on his own hubris. Ling Han didn't even look back. Fire this trash. And this girl, Xiao Ying? She's the only one here with a spine. Give her his job. It is done, Fu Yuansheng bowed. Whatever you desire, young Master Lane. Xiao Ying stood frozen, tears of pure, shocked gratitude streaming down her face. She had gone from a terrified attendant to a manager in a heartbeat, all because of the boy she had shown a spark of kindness to. Yuan Gang's pathetic whimpering for mercy fell on deaf ears. In this world, a maggot's tears carry no weight. He was a minor character, a stain on the floor, and he was left to rot in his own defeat. Behind him, the staff nearly erupted into cheers. They had endured his petty tyranny for months, watching him bloat with unearned arrogance. Seeing him forced to choke down a table leg was the only justice they needed. Xiao Ying watched Ling Han disappear into the inner sanctum, her eyes shimmering with a dangerous, infatuated heat. She was smart enough to know the chasm between their statuses, but gratitude, and a sudden, sharp ambition, burned in her chest. Fu Yuansheng had acknowledged her. In this pavilion, she was now untouchable. Inside Fu Yuansheng's private study, the air was heavy with the scent of ancient wood and bitter herbs. Ling Han didn't waste breath on pleasantries. He had a soul to forge. He told Fu Yuansheng he was borrowing the remaining ingredients for the second star pill. Fu Yuansheng didn't just nod, he practically bowed. Borrow? What a goddamn joke. To provide the raw materials for a grandmaster's work was an honor that gold couldn't buy. He waved his hand dismissively. The ingredients weren't a loan, they were a tribute. Ling Han wasn't one for false modesty. Fine, since you're providing the materials, I'll refine it here. You and the others can watch. I'll perform a specific alchemical skill for you. It wasn't the legendary, 3-fire guide, but for these starved alchemists, it would be like seeing the face of God. Yes, please, Fu Yuansheng stammered, his dignity as a pavilion master vanishing. But, could you wait? Just one moment. I want to call a few more to witness this. It's too great a tragedy for only 3 of us to see. He was a man who saw the bigger picture. If Rain Country's alchemists grew stronger, the country grew stronger. Zhu Yixin and Zhang Weishan looked down, ashamed of their own selfishness. They had wanted the miracle all to themselves. Fine, Ling Han said, but keep it under 10 people. I'm not running a circus. Fu Yuansheng scrambled out like a common errand boy. Left behind, the 7th Princess Qi Zan Tai shifted from foot to foot, her royal blood boiling with boredom. She looked at Hu Niu, who was perched on a chair like a silent, golden predator. You're so cute, the princess cooed, reaching out to scoop the child up. Hu Niu's reaction was instantaneous. Her lips peeled back, revealing needle-sharp white teeth, and a low, guttural snarl vibrated in her throat. If you value your fingers, I'd pull that hand back, Ling Han warned without looking up. I'm in the second layer of the element gathering tier, she scoffed, her royal pride insulted. A little girl isn't going to. Snap. Hu Niu didn't just bite, she lunged with the speed of a striking cobra. Ah! Qi Zan Tai shrieked, recoiling as blood bloomed on her delicate hand. The pain was sharp, deep, and immediate. Tears welled in her eyes. Ling Han scooped Hu Niu up before she could go for the throat. I've been bitten by her. You think your cultivation makes you special? It doesn't. He turned to the feral girl, his voice firming. She's a friend, Niu, don't eat her. Hu Niu clung to his neck, her eyes still locked on the princess with a murderous, unblinking intensity. As they waited, the masters asked of the girl's past. When Ling Han told them of the tiger's den, they were stunned. To survive among beasts for years and emerge with that kind of raw, lethal instinct. She wasn't a child, she was a survivor of the most brutal order. The door creaked open. Fu Yuansheng returned with 7 alchemists. Some were old men with skin like parchment, others in the prime of their lives, but every single one wore a silver badge, black-grade elites, the pride of the city. "This is young Master Han," Fu Yuansheng announced, his voice tight with excitement. "You will observe him refine a pill. Watch every movement, do not blink." The room went cold. The 7 newcomers looked at each other, then at Ling Han, their expressions curdling into pure, concentrated disbelief. They were black grade masters. In Rain Country, they were the elite. People begged for a drop of their wisdom. And now, their pavilion master was telling them to sit like schoolboys and watch a teenager play with a cauldron? One man in his 40s, He Lin, couldn't take the insult. "Pavilion master, is this a joke? You summoned us from our labs to watch a child? Is this your illegitimate son? Are we here to babysit?" Fu Yuansheng's face turned a violent shade of crimson. He knew what a miracle Ling Han was offering. To see these arrogant fools spit on it made his blood boil. "He Lin, apologize to young Master Han, now." "Apologize?" He Lin sneered, his ego flaring like a torch. "I am a black grade master. My status is sacred. You want me to bow to a boy who probably still wets his bed? Are you using your position to settle some private grudge with my father?" "You dare!" Zhu Yixin roared, his knuckles widening. "Ha ha ha ha." He Lin's laughter was a jagged insult. He feared no one here. His father was He Luo Yun, the other black grade high-level titan and Fu Yuansheng's lifelong rival. His father was on the verge of breaking into the earth grade. To He Lin, Fu Yuansheng was a fading relic trying to flex his muscles. "Save your breath. This is pathetic. Get out." Ling Han's voice was a low, vibrating growl. He pointed a single, steady finger at the door. He Lin blinked, stunned by the sheer audacity of the boy. "Brat, you're talking to me?" Zhu Yixin and Zhang Weishan stepped forward, their auras flaring, shielding Ling Han with a wall of pure, lethal intent. "Two dogs guarding a puppy," He Lin spat, his face twisting with derision. "I'm leaving. I have better things to do than watch a wet behind-the-ears brat fail at a cauldron. Pay." He spat on the floor, his laughter echoing down the hallway as he strode away, leaving a trail of pure, unadulterated venom in his wake. Fu Yuansheng's face twisted through a dozen different emotions in a heartbeat. He stared at the empty doorway where Yulin had vanished, then let out a long, hollow sigh. "The man is an arrogant prick," he whispered, his voice heavy with regret. "But his talent. I thought I was handing him a miracle on a silver platter. I never imagined he'd be so blinded by his own ego that he'd spit on it." He turned to Ling Han, bowing low with his hands clasped. "Young Master Han, please. Do not let that fool's filth stain your heart." Ling Han offered a thin, razor-sharp smile. "It's fine." He said it calmly, but the subtext was lethal. He was letting it slide for Fu Yuansheng's sake, but if He Lin ever barked at him again, Ling Han wouldn't just ignore him. He would systematically shatter every tooth in the man's head. Then, "Let the work begin." Fu Yuansheng presented the tray of ingredients. Ling Han reached into his robes and produced the second star grass. The moment the grass hit the light, the other black-grade alchemists in the room stiffened. Their eyes flared with a mix of resentment and mockery. Second star grass? They were the elite of the country, and they had been summoned to watch a child brew a goddamn refreshing pill? To them, it was like a master chef being forced to watch a toddler boil water. Only their fear of Fu Yuansheng kept them from walking out, but their faces were masks of pure, curdled disdain. Zhu Yixin and Zhang Weishan saw the looks on their colleagues' faces and felt a surge of murderous rage. They wanted to draw their swords and purge the room of these blind idiots. How dare they doubt him? Zhang Weishan, however, felt a sudden, cold prickle of shame. He remembered his own arrogance when he first met Ling Han. Ling Han didn't give them a second glance. In his past life, he was the Emperor of Alchemy. He didn't need the validation of ants. He grabbed the furnace. Then, with a reckless, fluid motion, he began dumping multiple ingredients into the belly of the beast all at once. "Is he insane? He's just tossing them in like trash?" someone hissed. "He doesn't even know the first step of purification," another whispered, a cruel smirk forming. "Each herb needs its own temperature. If you dump them together, you just get ash. What a joke." Even the 3 masters who trusted him felt their hearts skip a beat. Was it possible Ling Han was being too careless? Was he about to fail before he even started? Ling Han's hands suddenly blurred. Flames roared to life, gushing from his palms like a volcanic eruption. He began to circle the furnace, his hands striking the bronze casing with rhythmic, thunderous force. Wang! Wang! Tong! Tong! Steam hissed from the vents, and a scent, rich, thick, and almost intoxicatingly sweet, began to flood the room. "What?" The alchemists surged forward as one, their eyes nearly popping out of their skulls. They looked like they were staring at a ghost rising from the grave. Master, what happened? Qi Zantai asked, her voice small and confused. She was a novice. She didn't understand why these legends were suddenly trembling. By the gods! One of them gasped, his voice a broken wheeze. 7 ingredients. He's purifying 7 different herbs at the exact same time. Am I hallucinating? It's impossible, another stammered, his arrogance replaced by a frantic, wide-eyed terror. Each one needs a different heat. But look at his palms. He's vibrating the furnace, splitting the internal temperature into 7 distinct zones. He's running 7 different fires in one pot. Incredible. Their disdain vanished, replaced by a raw, naked admiration that bordered on worship. But, does it actually matter? One alchemist whispered, his voice lacking any of its previous venom. It's flashy, sure, but purifying them one by one only takes a few more minutes. Why risk the whole batch? Even Fu Yuansheng nodded slowly. It's a god-tier display of control, but in the end, it's just a shortcut. Efficiency isn't everything. But then, the scent changed. It became so potent, so pure, that it felt like a physical weight in their lungs. Fu Yuansheng's head snapped up. No, wait, why is the aroma this powerful? The room went dead silent. As black-grade masters, they had purified these herbs 10,000 times. They knew exactly how they should smell. But this was different. This was the scent of a medicine stripped of every single molecule of filth. Is this because he did them together? It has to be, Fu Yuansheng gasped. The ancient texts. The legend spoke of sympathetic purification, where herbs use each other's elemental properties to purge impurities that fire alone can't touch. I thought it was a myth. Hiss. A collective indrawn breath echoed through the study. They weren't just watching a shortcut. They were watching a lost, divine art from the dawn of time. If they could master this, the success rate and potency of their pills would skyrocket. They realized with a jolt of horror that they had been blinking, missing the subtle finger movements and palm strikes that made it possible. They leaned in, their faces inches from the furnace, eyes wide and unblinking, desperate to catch the next second of the miracle. Ling Han ignored them. He was in the zone. Once the herbs were pure, he moved to the core of the process. His hands began to weave a complex pattern in the air. The four-form seal. Listen, Ling Han said, his voice calm even as the fire roared. He began to lecture, explaining the intricate balance of the seal, how to suppress the heat and expand the medicinal spirit simultaneously. He spoke like a god descending to instruct mortals. The 9 alchemists, the most powerful men in the country, dropped to the floor. They sat cross-legged, eyes glazed with focus, some of them striking the air as they tried to mimic his palm movements. They were no longer masters. They were starving beggars at a banquet. When the furnace finally cooled and the lid hissed open, the air was filled with a blinding, celestial light. Ling Han reached in and pulled out 7 shimmering, perfect second-star pills. 7. A perfect batch. He looked at the room. The 9 masters were still in a trance, lost in the logic of the four-forms seal. They didn't even notice he was finished. Let's go find some meat, Ling Han whispered to Hu Niu, a faint, satisfied smile on his face. He had 7 pills. Enough to elevate his divine sense to a terrifying new level. Hu Niu's eyes lit up. Meat, I'm coming too, Qi Zantai shouted, nearly tripping over a meditating black-grade master in her hurry to escape the suffocating silence of the study. Ling Han hauled Hu Niu into his arms. The weight of the girl a grounded anchor against the ethereal high of the alchemy he had just performed. Beside him, Qi Zantai hovered, still shell-shocked by the divine display she had just witnessed. But Fu Yuansheng was a warrior of the spiritual pedestal tier. His mind was a fortress. The moment they crossed the threshold, he snapped out of his trance and lunged after them. Young Master Han, you're leaving? Already? My work here is done, Ling Han said, casually rattling the jade bottle in his hand. The 7 second-star pills clinked inside, a sound that, to a master alchemist, was more precious than the heartbeat of a god. Please, let me escort you out, Fu Yuansheng pleaded, his voice thick with a raw, unyielding reverence. He wasn't just a pavilion master anymore. In his own mind, he was a student walking behind a titan. As they descended the massive staircase, a servant scurried up, breathless. Master, the 3rd Imperial Prince is below, he demands. Tell him to wait, Fu Yuansheng snapped, not even breaking his stride. The servant froze, his jaw dropping as he watched the most powerful alchemist in the country prioritize a dusty teenager and a feral girl over royalty. At the base of the stairs, the 3rd prince, Qi Fengyun, stood waiting. Beside him was a woman whose beauty was a sharp, dangerous blade. She was nearly 26, with a figure that could make a saint stumble and hair the color of fresh arterial blood. Ling Han's eyes narrowed. Gushing spring tear. To reach such a height before 30 in a wasteland like Rain Country marked her as a monster of talent. Pavilion Master, the prince greeted, bowing with the calculated humility of a man who knew he might one day wear the crown. Brother, Qi Zhantai whispered, offering a small bow. Fu Yuansheng merely nodded. Wait here. I must see off my most honored guest first. Most honored guest? Qi Fengyun's penetrating gaze swung toward Ling Han. He scanned the boy, searching for a noble crest or a hidden aura. He knew every major player in the imperial city, yet this boy, this honored guest, who had Fu Yuansheng acting like a footman, was a total ghost. Fu Yuansheng didn't care for the prince's confusion. He spent the walk to the gates shamelessly begging Ling Han to return, his eyes reflecting a desperate hunger to master the four forms seal. Only when Ling Han gave a non-committal nod did the old man finally retreat, practically sprinting back to his study to practice. Meet, 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 Hu Niu chirped, her small hands clawing at the air. Brother, wait. The third prince had caught up, the crimson-haired woman trailing him like a silent shadow. Ling Han stopped. Something you need? Qi Fengyun smiled. The picture of royal grace. He had 17 brothers, and at least 5 were ready to cut his throat for the throne. He needed allies, and a man who commanded Fu Yuansheng's respect was a prize beyond measure. I am Qi Fengyun. May I have the honor of your name? Ling Han. Brother Ling, the prince said, pulling a violet-shaped badge from his robes. I have urgent business, or I would host you myself. Take this. In this city, this badge carries my face. It will open doors that are usually bolted shut. Thanks, Ling Han said, pocketing the token without a shred of the proper gratitude. The prince offered a final, respectful salute and vanished into the crowd. Ling Han, do you have any idea what that is? Qi Zhantai whispered, her voice trembling with envy. That's the violet token. Rumor says you can walk into any restaurant in the imperial city, eat until you burst, and the prince picks up the tab. It's a blank check for the stomach. Ling Han froze for a second, then a low, brutal laugh bubbled up from his chest. What's so funny? The third prince is going to go bankrupt, Ling Han said, patting Hu Niu's head. He just handed a blank check to a goddamn black hole. Huyang Academy, Feng Luo's room. Bastard, bastard, bastard. Wei Yilo was a caged animal, his eyes webbed with red veins, his face a mask of twitching fury. Do you hear me? Wu Songlin expelled me? Me? A genius? I'm out of the alchemy department? Feng Luo sat in the shadows, his face still bruised and his mouth a jagged mess of missing teeth. He spoke through a thick, wet lisp. You're telling me for the 40th time, Wei, shut up. Feng Luo didn't care about a disgraced yellow-grade failure anymore. But he did care about revenge. He pulled a violet badge from his pocket, a cruel light dancing in his eyes. What is that? Wei Yula gasped. The third prince gave this to my brother, Feng Luo hissed, his voice a spray of spittle and hate. Now, imagine if I report this stolen. And it just happens to be found in Ling Han's room. How will the academy react to a thief? How will the prince react when he finds a peasant has defiled his token? Wei Yuli's face split into a slow, demonic grin. We frame the bastard, we bury him. Dash dash dash. Ha 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 ha. Theft is a parasitic, gutless crime, but when you steal from the third prince, that's a death warrant. Wei Hila couldn't choke back his manic laughter. He didn't care about justice, he cared about blood. Even if the academy tried to play diplomat, the imperial family's shadow would crush any mercy. Not even Wu Songlin's legendary reputation could shield a common thief from the emperor's wrath. Stealing from royalty wasn't just a crime, it was an act of war. Ling Han was walking a straight line to the executioner's block. But wait, Wei Yula said, his laughter dying into a sharp, predatory silence. Why would he steal it? We need a motive, a reason that sticks. Feng Luo let out a low, venomous snicker. The third prince only grants this token to his inner circle. It's more than a badge. It's a soul bond of friendship. It screams status. But more importantly for a poor brat like Ling Han, it's a blank check. Every meal, every room, every drop of wine in the imperial city. The prince pays for it all. Ya! Wei Yuli's eyes burned with a green, sickly envy. Even as a so-called genius, he had never been deemed worthy of such a treasure. Seen a spoiled, high-born brat like Feng Luo toss it around like a toy made his stomach turn, but his hatred for Ling Han was stronger. Feng Luo smiled, a cold, oily expression. The badge had been a gift from his brother, Feng Yan. a shield to ensure the city treated him like a god. He patted Wei Li's shoulder with patronizing weight. Young Master Wei, the honors are yours. You're the one who's going to plant the evidence. Me? Wei Li stiffened. He was a man of the cauldron and the ego, not a common thief or a shadow dweller. He had always had lackeys to do his dirty work. He'd never had to get his own hands filthy. What's the matter? No stomach for it? Feng Luo's smile turned into a jagged blade. He began to pull the token away. Then forget it. I thought you wanted justice, but if you're too cowardly to take it, I won't force you, stay a failure. Wait, Wei Li barked, his teeth grinding so hard they threatened to shatter. I'll do it. His soul felt like it was being dissolved in acid. He had only crossed Ling Han to protect Feng Luo's honor, and now he was being discarded and blackmailed by the very man he'd defended. But the reality was brutal. Without Wu Songlin, he was a nobody, a low-grade alchemist with no future. If he didn't cling to Feng Luo, and the titan of martial arts standing behind him, he would rot in the gutters of Rain Country. He reached out and took the violet badge, his head bowing low. He was no longer a peer, he was a dog on a leash. Ha 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 ha. Feng Luo's roar of triumph echoed in the small room. He looked at the disgraced alchemist at his side and felt a rush of sickening power. Even his brother hadn't managed to break a master and turn him into a servant. Who's the spoiled brat now? After the meal, Qi Zhantai vanished back into the pavilion, her mind likely spinning with Ling Han's miracles. Ling Han, however, was focused on the hunt. He dragged Hu Niu through the markets, buying raw ores and crystalline dust, materials for the jagged, invisible teeth he intended to plant around his courtyard. He wasn't in a rush for the pills yet, safety came first. The restrictions he set were primitive, a simple tripwire for the soul. In his past life, he could have woven a net that would turn a heaven-tier warrior into mincemeat. Here, he had to settle for a silent alarm, a psychic scream that would alert him the moment a rat breached his perimeter. It'll have to do, he muttered, his eyes cold. I don't have enemies yet, anyway. If Lu Yu Tong or the prince had heard him, they would have choked. No enemies. He was surrounded by vipers like Yi Jun Chen, Nangong Ji, and the looming shadow of Feng Yan, a man destined to rule. But Ling Han didn't see them as enemies. To a titan who had once looked down upon the world, they were barely even distractions. With the perimeter set, he sat cross-legged and swallowed a second star pill. The sensation was a violent, invigorating rush. In this era, people believed the soul only grew with the body, a passive, sluggish crawl. But Ling Han knew better. He knew that the divine sense was a muscle that could be torn and rebuilt, strengthened until it could crush a man's mind with a single thought. 1 pill. 2. 7. By the time the last drop of medicine dissolved, Ling Han's eyes snapped open. They were no longer the eyes of a boy. They were twin abysses, dark and suffocating. My soul has doubled, he whispered, a predatory smile tugging at his lips, equivalent to the gushing spring tear. This was his secret weapon. His body was still weak, but his mind could now process spiritual qi at a rate that would leave his peers in the dust. With his immortal-grade spirit base, he was no longer just cultivating, he was devouring the world's energy. I need to break through, he hissed. I'm tired of being a god trapped in the body of a peasant. Suddenly, a ripple moved through the air. The silent alarm he'd planted in the dirt shrieked in the back of his mind. A rat has sneaked in. Ling Han almost wanted to laugh. He had barely finished anchoring the spiritual alarm in the dirt of his courtyard, and he already had a night crawler sniffing around his door. This place was supposed to be a tomb, a haunted ruin that no sane student would touch. The odds of a random thief stumbling onto this specific patch of dirt were zero. This wasn't a burglary, it was a targeted strike. Rustle. Hu Niu snapped to attention, her small body coiling like a spring. Her beast-like senses were screaming. Her nose, sharper than any hunting dog's, had already locked onto the intruder's scent. Her eyes flashed with a primal, territorial bloodlust. Shush, Ling Han whispered, pulling her close. He didn't want the rat to scurry away just yet. He wanted to see what kind of poison it was carrying. Hu Niu went still in his arms, but a low, jagged growl vibrated in her chest. To her, this room was her den, and anyone who stepped inside deserved to have their throat torn out. A dark silhouette slipped into the living room. It didn't scavenge for gold or weapons. It bypassed the valuables, fumbling awkwardly with the small table in the center of the room. After a few frantic seconds of rustling, the figure turned and retreated into the night. A razor-thin smile sliced across Ling Han's face. As the intruder crossed the threshold of the door, a sliver of moonlight caught his features. Wei Yula. Ling Han walked into the room, lit a candle, and approached the table. He picked up a small wooden box, a container for a few cheap trinkets he'd picked up. He flipped the lid. Inside, nestled among the junk, was a new arrival. A badge, carved into the elegant, mocking shape of a violet. Ling Han reached into his own pocket and pulled out the identical badge gifted to him by the third prince. He held them side by side. "Oh," he whispered, the realization hitting him with a wave of dark amusement. "So that's the game." It was a textbook setup. Someone would report a theft. Wei Yulou would play the heroic witness, leading the hounds straight to Ling Han's door. Finding a royal token in a student's room wasn't just a crime, it was political suicide. The academy would expel him to save face, and the third prince, supposedly enraged, would have every right to erase Ling Han from existence. Wei Yuli's only mistake was a fatal one. He didn't know Ling Han had already met the prince. He didn't know the stolen item was already legally in his possession. "If you want to play a game of life and death," Ling Han muttered, his eyes cold and pitiless, "then I'll make sure you lose everything." He didn't move the badge. He closed the box, went back to his bed, and plunged into deep cultivation. With his strengthened divine sense, the world felt different. Spiritual qi didn't just flow into him, it was dragged into the five elements mix chaos lotus like a vortex. His origin nuclei pulsed with a raw, new power. What should have taken a month of agonizing work was now happening in half the time. As the sun began to bleed over the horizon, he pushed through the limits of the indestructible heaven scroll, hardening his skin toward the body of rock cliff. Soon, steel blades would snap against his bare flesh. He rested for an hour, all he needed now, and headed to Mo Gao's courtyard. They were deep in a fierce debate over the soul of the blade when the world interrupted them. Pung! 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 The banging on the door was violent, a crude violation of the sacred space of the sword. Mo Gao's face darkened with a manic fury. To interrupt him while discussing the blade was an unforgivable sin. He ripped the door open to find a mob of 10 people standing in the dust. "Is Ling Han here?" A young man in green robes stepped forward. He stood with his chin raised, radiating a suffocating aura of arrogance. He was in the gushing spring tier, a predator among the sheep of the academy. "Who the hell are you, and why are you hunting my student?" Mo Gao growled, his hand inching toward his hilt. "Teacher Mo, we are the discipline committee," a second man in black said, though his voice lacked the green-clad warrior's bite. "We have business with the boy." "Don't waste words on this old man," the gushing spring warrior snapped. "Tell Ling Han to crawl out here, now." Mo Gao's eyes flared with a cold, sharp light. What crime has he committed that requires the hounds of the discipline committee? "Theft," the green-clad man spat. "We suspect he's harboring stolen goods. We're here to gut his room and search his person. Now, get out of the way, or I'll charge you with obstruction." "Nonsense!" Mo Gao roared. In his eyes, the sword was truth. A genius of the blade like Ling Han could not be a common thief. It was a contradiction of the soul. "Get lost before I cut you down." "Mo Gao, you're a teacher, not a god," the student sneered, his power beginning to flare. "Step aside, or I'll take you down with him." "Teacher Mo." Ling Han stepped out from the shadows, a calm, terrifyingly steady smile on his face. He placed a hand on Mo Gao's arm. "They're here for me. Let me handle these rats." Ling Han's gaze raked over the crowd. His smile widened as his eyes locked onto two familiar, trembling faces in the back. Feng Luo and Wei Hila. "I assume those two aren't on the committee?" Ling Han asked, pointing a finger at them. "They are the victims," the green-clad man said, his eyes narrowing. "They reported the loss. Now, give it up. In front of me, there is no place for a criminal to hide."